Welcome to This Week from the Principal's Desk, a podcast about Lutheran schools and their leadership. This is hosted by two Lutheran school principals. My name is Rob Lunak, and I'm the principal at Mount Calvary Lutheran School in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and my co-host is Mike Sheeman.
My name is Mike Sheeman, and I'm principal at Bethany Lutheran School in Parma, Ohio. And as Rob and I record this, I'm looking at the date. It's April 28th, and I'm not going to lie, I might be counting down how many school days we have left. I think the number's 25, so we're getting there. And Rob and I were talking and thinking this might be a good opportunity to start thinking about how do you end your year successfully? I'm sure everybody's head is in the last few weeks of school. May is an insane month. Typically, all of the big events are happening in May, your band concerts, your final fundraisers, your other board meetings, you're probably hiring staff, you're doing all those things. But we have an amazing thing to celebrate in what God has done in the lives of our kids this year and the lives of our families and the lives of our staff. And so we thought it'd be fun to engage in a conversation about how do you successfully end a school year. And I think Rob has some great ideas. We were talking before this, and he's going to have some things to unpack. But one of the things we were talking about was to say, really, the best way to plan for a successful end of the school year starts at the beginning of the school year. And as you open up your year in August with meetings and things like that, it's always important to envision, where do you want to end up? And if you have that vision and that's something that's been forecast in front of you and you've kept it all year long, the end of the year can really be a celebration of what God has done in and through your Lutheran school ministry. Rob, what would you say to that? Have you had experiences like that and the opportunity to think about that?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, that the end of the year is something you have been planning since the beginning of the year. And really, you can never plan too far ahead. Now, that doesn't mean that everything goes according to plan, because we live in the real world and things do not always go according to plan. But luckily, we have God's grace, and so we have forgiveness and redemption, and we have God in all those things, even if they don't quite go the way we want it. And the end of the school year is no different. If you sit down and you look at the dreams and hopes you had for the end of the school year, did you accomplish everything you wanted to accomplish? Did the year go the way you wanted it to go? So every principal, when they pray for their school year, you pray that it's going to be smooth sailing from August all the way to June. And inevitably, something happens, whether that's discipline, whether that's maybe you have a boiler blow in your building, maybe a class just isn't as well behaved as you want them to be. Things happen. And when we get to the end of the year, if we focus on the things that detracted from what we wanted, well, that's no way to end a school year. We'll talk about those things, absolutely. But if that's our focus at the end of the year, then we are missing the point of having a Lutheran school, I would argue. Because that's like looking at all of the sin and garbage in real life and forgetting that there's heaven. Just focusing on, hey, here are the negative things. That's all we're going to talk about. And that's not what we want to do. For the end of the school year here, our last day is a celebration. We have a great chapel, we give some awards, and that's kind of a bittersweet moment. You got kids that are moving, you got kids that are graduating, but it's also a joyous time where we go, hey, this was a great year. This was fantastic. We loved everything we did. Let's go out on a high note. Do you guys kind of end that same way, Mike?
We do. We do. I think that all school celebrations are really important. I also think that the individual classrooms are important. But one of the other things to think about, though, is that for some of our students, this is actually a time of grief when school ends, because maybe some kids don't know where their next meal is coming from. Maybe some kids aren't coming back to the school and they're worried about separation from their friends. Maybe there's a teacher that's not returning that was a dearly loved teacher, and there's some goodbyes that need to happen. All of those things are there. So the celebration emotions, yeah, for sure, we want to pump those up. But I think it's also important to recognize that there's going to be some struggles for kids too. And so I have had last days of school where the behavior hasn't always been up to par either, because when kids experience other types of emotions, they don't know how to handle those things. And so then their behavior goes out of whack. And I've ended last days of school with parent conflicts before, or behaviors that I've actually had to punish students for, which is always disappointing. And so I think rather when I was a principal early on, that always shocked me. And so I think it's an important topic or important point to bring up right now. If you're listening to this and you're newer in administration, don't be surprised for those kinds of things, but just be ready to give out a lot of love on the last day of school. The other thing that we prepare to give a lot of on the last day of school is a lot of Jesus. We spend chapel's long for us on that day because I also know that for a lot of our kids in our demographic here anyway, this is the last dose of God that they're going to get for the summer. I'm not going to see these families in church because they maybe if they go to different churches, likely it's no church at all where I am. And so we want to make sure that they are confident in knowing that they are special, they are valued, they are unique, and most importantly, they are loved. And so I always, I'm a bit of a control nut. And so I always make sure I get the last message for the chapel. And it's always about the love of God and Jesus and how powerful that is. So I really encourage you to do whatever you can to infuse the faith, not just integrate, but infuse the faith on that last day of school.
That's a really great message, and that's the point of our Lutheran schools, right? We put that in everything we do. The last day is no exception. Now, that last day is not just about the kids either. It's about your teachers. For some of your teachers, maybe you have a retirement. Maybe this is their last day teaching. Maybe it's their last day with you. Maybe they have a new call that they'll be starting in the fall. Maybe someone's stepping away from teaching to start a family. Lots of reasons. And so don't just think about the kids, think about the teachers, and plan, because the end of the school year doesn't end on that last day. If you are anything like my school and Mike's school, you got just about at least a week of stuff after that last day of school. So let's talk about that a little bit. What I like to do after the last day of school, that very next day, I generally like to give teachers a day off. I'm like, hey, rest, recharge, take a break. We'll start. Usually we end, the last day of school is usually like a Thursday or a Wednesday. So this year it's going to be Thursday. We'll take Friday off. We'll start back in our meetings Monday, generally 9 a.m. You don't got to be there at 7 on Monday morning. We got no kids. Sleep in a little bit, get a coffee. We'll start our morning at 9. And then we have meetings. And some of that is dotting your I's and crossing your T's for the end of the school year. Are your report cards all done? Is your room all organized? Did you do an inventory? Did you meet with the teacher above you to let them know the kids that are going to them? Did you get everything in the cumulative files? Did you do all that stuff? But then also a little bit of time for reflection. And if you have surveys that you give, this is a great time to give surveys to your teachers. And I have two things on surveys. One, if you're not giving surveys, you should be doing it anyway because it's part of your accreditation. You got to give the NLSA survey. You have to. And so give that one. That's an easy one. They already have one for teachers made for you. Give that one out. Second thing, I personally hate anonymous surveys. I hate them. I hate them so much. I understand why, but part of me thinks that especially in a Lutheran school, if there's something negative you want to put, Matthew 18 says you should come tell me. You should just come talk to me. You can still put it in the survey. That's fine. Just put your name on it. That's fine. You're not going to bother me. I understand why they're anonymous. I get all that. It's my own bugaboo. I think nothing really destroys morale faster than an anonymous survey. It's my own hang up. Mike, how do you guys plan your meetings? What do you guys do?
Yeah, I agree with you on the survey thing wholeheartedly. I never do an anonymous survey ever. And some people won't fill them out because they're not anonymous, but that's a whole other topic. But actually, as I'm hearing you talk, Rob, our end of the year is very similar. I too give them that Friday off because we just don't need that break. And I think there's an element here of caring for your staff, self-care, that's important. Plus, I think too, teachers have it in their heads a lot about what needs to get done. And if you don't give that day or that buffer time before the staff meeting, all I find they think about in the staff meeting is what they need to do in their classroom. So if I've given them a little time to take care of the priorities in their classroom, I find them to be a little more focused in the meetings that happen afterward. One thing that I've done a lot is I communicate what the last week with the teachers looks like, again, back in August, because before I started doing that, what I would find is, May 15th would roll around and I'd be saying to the teachers, oh, hey, by the way, here are my expectations at the last week of school. And some of them are going to say, oh, but I'm heading out of state for my grandmother's birthday, or the Disney tickets were cheaper on these dates. And so I'm not going to be there. And I mean, I could have been a jerk. Hey, you're contractually obligated. You have no choice. Change your Disney plans. But then I realized, you know what? People plan ahead. So if you let them know what that looks like early on, that gives you the ability, if you decide to, it gives you the ability to enforce those dates later on and say, I'm sorry, you had these since August. These plannings are important. The one thing that I don't do at the end of the school year, some schools do this and no judgment, but I don't do any professional development at the end of the school year. I know it's easy to say, hey, I'm going to throw in my first aid CPR training. Hey, I'm going to, the speaker happens to be in our area, or we talked about how next year we want to implement this technology platform or whatever. So we're just going to squeak this in here right before everybody leaves and get out the door. I find them to be less effective. I do struggle also to put them in the first week of August because teachers are just getting back and trying to open their classrooms. But given my choice between the two, I'll do August any day if I had to. So that's just something to consider as well, because the teachers are eager to leave, and frankly, rightfully so.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great idea. I'm going to steal that about giving them those last days on the first days. That's something that I'm one of those guys that we all know in the last days. I've said, hey, you're on contract till this day, but I haven't given a set schedule what that's going to look like. But that's a good idea. That's something I will be stealing for sure. Now, let's say you have those end of the year meetings. I think there are kind of three ways those generally go. One, it's overwhelmingly positive and everyone's just really excited and everyone gets right to work and gets their stuff done. Two, it's been kind of a contentious year or there's something contentious and those meetings can kind of drag. And three, schools where you don't have, maybe everyone's been there for 40 years and everyone knows exactly what they do, and you guys have like a 10-minute meeting in the morning and you say, okay, go get all your stuff done, and then everyone goes out for cocktails afterwards, right? I think those are kind of your three options. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, let's say you have something that might be a little contentious. One of the things I've noticed is that that end of the year meeting, people have been, if they're frustrated about something, it's something that's been building and something that's been growing. And then all of a sudden, the end of the school year is kind of like a release valve for that. And you'll just hear all about it at your meeting. And so I'm going to recommend that if you have anything coming up like that, and you know you as a staff have to deal with something or talk about something, that you structure that in such a way to avoid unstructured comments. And I'll explain that a little further. I would always ask for those things ahead of time. Hey, why don't you guys get into, there's a Google survey you can get in. You can put those all things in ahead of time, and I'll take them and I'll put them kind of up in a word cloud, right? And then anything that comes up more than once will show up bigger in their word cloud. There's free websites you can go to do this. Or maybe even putting those on the board and giving everybody 3 post-it notes and say, hey, we have time to talk about some of these, not all of them. You're going to vote with your post-it notes. Put your post-it notes, you can either put all of them or none of them next to the thing that you guys want us to talk about. And what that does is that helps the people who are upset about some of these things see if that is a concern school wide or if that is just their concern. And I think we all know people who are really particular about one thing. I personally hate being late. It's my pet peeve. And I married a woman, bless her heart, who is late to everything. And her parents are late to everything. And they joke about it and they go, oh, well, ha ha. I'm like, no, stop it. Quit being late to things. We live 3 minutes from church and we are still late to church sometimes. It drives me nuts. But that doesn't mean that everyone agrees with me on that, because they're on time to all the time critical things. Absolutely. The things like you can be a couple of minutes late to church and you're not the pastor, so that's allowed. Yeah, they're a little late to those things. So that's just my own personal pet peeve. And you'll see at the end of the year, sometimes people will pull out their own personal pet peeve, and that's what they think everyone should be talking about. And so it's nice to get the whole staff in on that and see that, okay, this is my thing. I get that. We can talk about something else. One of the things I'll say with that, and we should probably even have a whole episode on staff conflict and maybe faculty meetings and that type of thing. It could be a good topic for us. We as Lutherans are all very polite people. The people who work in our Lutheran schools are all generally very polite people to a fault, I would say, because someone will voice a concern and no one else will say, you know what, that's a silly thing. Let's not talk about that. But because nobody said anything, in that person's mind, everyone agrees with them. Everybody agrees with them. So you definitely want to structure those in such a way to avoid some of that because you don't need a contentious end of the year. Trust me, because that's just going to carry over. That'll fester and that'll work its way into the summer and that'll bleed into your school year. So you want to end on a strong positive note by caring for your teachers. And so that means you have to intentionally plan around those things that might get a little contentious.
I love how you put that, Rob, because I really feel like I don't know, the attitude maybe going out of there, the environment you want to have that they leave on. You want it to be a high note. You want it to be something that is like, God is whispering in our ear and maybe screaming in our face, well done, good and faithful servant. You really want that. But when those issues are floating and you don't want the elephant in the room, but the reality is, as an administrator, you're just as exhausted as the staff are, maybe more, who knows? But you're you're not going to come to the end of the school year meetings and solve everything before summer. But I've found that the most important thing for the staff is that they feel heard. I love your sticky note idea. I think I'm going to steal that one myself because you can say, you know what, we're wrapping up the year, and I can see that these are the issues that we have, and let them know I've jotted these things down. And when we come back in August, these are the ones that we're going to tackle. We're going to talk about these things because I want these things to be better. I want these things to change. And I find that if you're able to give the staff the hope that they're going to walk back in to an environment that's going to work together to fix what their concerns are, it's a much better way to end the year. Now, my encouragement though is don't just pay that lip service. Don't take their list, type it in your computer, and then the day after they leave, delete the document. I mean, it really is something that your integrity is on the line to be able to say, hey, we said in June that we're going to talk about these things. So it's August, and here we are, and here's what we've prioritized. But here you can see all of your topics, and we're going to talk about these as the school year goes on. You could even talk to the staff and say, these are the ones that were identified. Let's revisit those and determine where are they on our priority list? Because again, involving them in the process is such a great collaborative approach that really builds capacity with the administrators. The other thing I think in planning for the end of the year, for me, it also includes planning for the summer. Uh, we have other staff that are non-teaching staff, and it's important that they know their roles and expectations as well. And I learned this particular lesson from an epic failure that I had. At the end of the year came, my admin staff had no clue what my expectations were for the summer, and so messages weren't being picked up or mail wasn't I didn't direct them and they didn't ask. And so we found we lost a lot of connection over the summer. And that was early on in my career. And I learned that it's important to know throughout the summer who is taking responsibility for the day-to-day operations that still need to happen, and how are you caring for your non-teaching staff as well? How are you ensuring that they get time off? Because you don't want to have they're exhausted too, and you don't want to burn them out further by saying, "Oh, you don't get a break," even if they're contracted for 50, even if they're contracted for 52 weeks. They still need that time. They need to recharge. So, how are you taking care of your other staff throughout the summer?
Yeah, and that's really the whole point of all this is yes, we want to be planned well. Yes, we want the meetings to go well for us. But at the end of the day, it's not about us. It's about the school and it's about the people you serve. And so I take everybody out to lunch and we have fun and we try and relax a little bit because we did do a lot. We did accomplish a lot making it to the end of the school year. Because the end of getting to the end of the school year is not easy. If you've been a teacher for any period of time, you go, okay, well, teaching can be difficult, and it can be. It is one of those jobs that is made more difficult because everyone went to school, so everyone thinks they're an expert on it. And teachers and principals listening, I'm sure, are nodding their heads. That's exactly how it is. And so we need to take time to pour back into people because they've been pouring out of themselves for a whole year, for a whole
Right.
school year. And for if you're on 12-month calls, then those people probably still have church responsibilities. If you're on 10-month calls or 10-month contracts, then the question now becomes, do you contact people at all over the summer or not? And if so, what about? And I will, here we're on 10-month calls and contracts. So I'll tell the teachers, hey, why don't you just give me your vacation plans? So if I need you, I know don't bother you this week. And because sometimes things come up, and yes, you're contracted from June 15th to, or, your contract goes from August 15th to June 15th. So I shouldn't talk to you in June and July, right? But sometimes things come up and I need to get a hold of you. So I'll ask for vacation schedules. Just go, okay, you're in Disney. I'm going to leave you alone. I'll send you an email that you can ignore until then, right? But some of those summer planning bits. And then you as principal should take some time in the summer too. Have reduced hours. That's not a bad thing. I'll generally come in 9 to 2 in the summer unless I got other things going on that day, because you need some time as well. Because let's be honest about it, you're probably working a lot more than a normal 8-hour day during the school year, I would imagine. I know I do. And so take some time to recharge your batteries, because you can only plan as well as you are well.
No, I totally agree with that. As an administrator, you sometimes have other responsibilities even within your congregation. Sometimes the administrator is responsible for helping out with VBS, or maybe there's church responsibilities, but I think having that time to recharge is absolutely vital. And everybody has to look at what that means for themselves. What I learned too is that you need to set your own boundaries, and you also need to enforce them. Because if you don't do that, then you could be called on at any time. But like you said, we need to recharge. We absolutely have to recharge. And you can still do things. I mean, I would actually say I don't really set hours for myself in the summer. I do pop in, I swing in every now and then, but I am on my email. But there's times when I might go 3-4 days without looking at my email. I still put an out of office reply on, but people know I'll get back to them relatively soon. But I think that is that time where you're right, Rob. We get so many evening meetings or weekend commitments. Everybody says, I'm going to be a teacher because I get summers off. And I've always said, no, no, no. Summers are time in lieu for what you've put in throughout the year. So it's vital for principals to take summertime as self-care as well, because if you're not recharged for August, that's a problem.
Yeah. As with lots of things in our Lutheran schools, there's no one right way. There are still lots of wrong ways, but there's no one right way. So however you are ending your year, whether you do big events, small events, I think the important part is that you have a plan. One thing we didn't touch on that I think we probably should is those end of year events. Should you as principal go to them? And I think you should. I think if you have an end of the year concert or an end of the year picnic or an end of the year whatever, it's important that you're there, because they've put in all this work, and that is a little bit of recognition that you can provide them. I don't know if we mentioned that, but I think that part is worth highlighting. Everything else, there's lots of ways to do it. Just make sure that you're planning and you're taking care of your people. Those I think would be if we had to say, pick two takeaways, I think those would be them.
Yeah, totally agree. Taking care of your people is part of your calling as an administrator. God has given you a role within this team, and it's a pretty vital role. So that's something to take really serious. And again, I agree with you, Rob. Plan ahead. Let people know what the expectations are. I'm going to give you one thing that our school where I served did for the kids. The kids loved it. The parents hated it, but I always let the kids win that battle because I thought it was cool. They did something called the ABC countdown to end the school year. And with the last 26 days of the school year, every day was the letter of the alphabet. So we came up with stuff. So C was like crazy sock day, or B was buddy day. We got our buddies together. Or Q was quiet day. We got extra AR points for quiet reading on Q. Z was zip up your backpack and go home for the last day of school. But we had fun with all the different letters of the alphabet. And I thought it was a ton of fun. The kids loved it. as we counted down to the last day of school, just infuse a little bit of fun, because you can get into the academic doldrums, or this testing that happens, or the why, kids are so excited about the end of the year. It's a chore to come to school. Give them something to look forward to. Have fun with it. These are the kids that you have loved on all year long. End it strong with them, celebrate with them, have fun with them, and be thankful for each and every moment that you have with these kids, even the difficult ones.
I think that's a great way to leave it, and that's a great idea. The ABCs of the last day of school. I really like that. We're at it. We have more. We have fewer than 26 days. I don't know how many we actually have because I don't. I generally don't count. I'm terrible at that. Well, I don't know. I know in the last days. I don't know how many days between then and now, but I know it's coming. That's about all I got. Okay, Mike. I think we've reached the end of this road. You want to close us in prayer?
You bet. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for our year. We thank you for all of the things that you've been doing in Lutheran schools across the globe, as kids have been fed with your word and they've learned more about the world around them. Thank you for all of those who have served so faithfully, for the teachers, for the administration, for the faculty, the staff, all of those who are in our Lutheran schools. And Lord, as people count down, we know that this comes with a lot of different emotions: the excitement that exists, the anxiety that comes with it, the uncertainty that might be there for some moving forward. But you are our God, you are our rock. And as we continue to move forward, we know that you are faithful to your promise, that never will you leave us, never will you forsake us. And your promise extends beyond calendar years, it extends beyond school years. So please continue to work in the hearts of these students so that they know that no matter where they go, they are loved, and that they may truly know and experience how wide and long and high and deep is your love in Jesus. Bless all who listen, bless all who serve, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.